I've been wanting to make this video, but I've been busy with the other cars that I have. Anyways, this is how you can lower the front of your MR04. Unfortunately, there isn't any other way other than either you can preload the spring by, which I won't recommend, putting shim under the knuckles that would preload the spring. I'm not going to recommend that, because although you're able to lower the front of the car, because when you put a shim or shims down here, it's going to preload the spring, which lowers down the car. But now you have a really stiff preloaded front end. What's going to happen is that every time you hit a bump on the track, the car is no longer going to absorb those bumps. Instead, it's just going to bounce off of it. Okay, we don't want that. Even if you put the soft spring, which there isn't any, once you preload it, it's going to bounce. The front end is going to be really bouncy, and it's going to feel like the car is understeering because it's bouncing, but you don't know that it's bouncing that much. It just feels like it's understeering because the front end is hopping. And also chance of the car traction rolling, because when you hit a turn and then it hits a bump, it can roll over. Okay, so I'm not going to recommend that, but that is an option to lower the front if you're only allowed to use the MR04 Kyosho spring. Now, if you can use the Kyosho MR03 springs, then you can use those to lower the car down. That's option number 2, which is what I would recommend. In this video, I only use PN Racing MR03 springs, so I don't know what it's like using the Kyosho MR03 springs. Although I do know that the Kyosho MR04 are taller slightly than the MR03 by 0.7 millimeter, and that will lower the car down. Anyway, this is the part number of the MR03 springs, and what I have here is the Kyosho MR04 red springs. And let's go ahead and measure the ride height first before I replace it with that. When I'm checking for the ride height, normally I don't, but this is a different car. This is not my spec car. This is the spec car. And with this car, I don't check the ride height on this car. I just drive it and rotate tires. With this red can or 8500 car that I have, it's tuned to chase the 2500 cars around, so it's not spec. Okay, I put it together to really chase the cars around, the 2500 cars, because this can actually keep up with them, but with the AAA battery. So this car is not spec, and when I'm checking the ride height for this car, I don't push down and then check. Why? Because the back end is really sticky. It doesn't want to go back to static position. So instead, I would pretend that the car is on the track and it's bouncing. So I would lift and drop. That's how I would check the front end and the rear end of this car. Okay, sometimes I would drop them both at the same time. Okay, right now the front of this car doesn't have grease. This one does. Okay, sometimes you don't need to put grease. It depends. Sometimes the front tires are too sticky, then it starts to hop a little, the front end chatters a little, then I put grease only on this car, not on that. Okay, grease in the kingpin a little bit, the Kyosho 5000, okay, just a dab on both sides, and then I leave it, but you now have to clean it. Okay, anyway, with that same thing, I would drop the front end. I don't know if you can see it on the video, but the front end of this car is bouncing. It's like dribbling because it doesn't have grease in the kingpin. Okay, that's how I would check it. And then I know the front of this car is higher than 2 millimeter, higher than that. So I'm gonna use this, and I use it under this screw and also here. Here, I measure it here, and then here. Why do I measure it here? When I'm checking for ride height in the front, because when you're turning the car, so what I do is when I'm checking, I'm pretending that the car is turning this way, so the car is leaning here and then sliding, okay? When I'm doing that test, I would turn the car this way and then slide it on my pit board with this fully compressed. The first thing that would touch, so I'm fully compressed this way and then sliding, okay? The first thing that touches the track or the pit board is, let me see if I can, that one. See that? And that is this right here. And that's the reason why I measure this. The next thing, and then the second thing that's going to touch is this one. So I measured here and here. They're pretty much the same height. Okay? I'm going to slide this under, and it stops at 2 millimeter. 2.1. That's where I checked mine. In the back, slide this under. Okay, looks like it's also 2.1. Yep, 2.1. Okay. To lower the front, so the front is also 2.1, the back is also 2.1. We're now going to put the MR03 springs and see if that's going to lower the car. I'm gonna post a picture of the height difference between the two, the PN and the MR04. It's about a millimeter shorter. The MR03 spring is, I want to say about 0.8 shorter than the MR04 Kyosho spring. Okay, now that the springs are back in, this is the PN Racing springs. Let's measure it. Oh, it stops at 0.6. Yeah, 0.6. Just right at 1.6, sorry. At 1.6. So earlier, so right now it's at 1.6, the ride height in the front. Earlier it was at 2.1. So the car dropped by 0.5 millimeter. Okay, so that's how you can lower the front of the car if this spec upgrade or aftermarket optional parts is allowed at your local track. Then you can use the PN Racing MR03 front spring to lower the front end down by 0.5 millimeter. I do want to mention that because now the spring is shorter, you have to run the hard arms. Okay, you have to run the hard arms. Why? Because the stock arms, they're really flexy. The plastic is soft, so when you hit something, you hit a wall, you hit another car, the front wheel can like droop down and pop the spring out. Okay, it's really soft plastic upper arms and even the lower arms. So you want to upgrade to the hard arms. This one is not that flexible. And look, the spring is not falling out. I'm gonna push on it. Well, yeah, it's not gonna fall out. I'm not saying it's never gonna fall out. Maybe it can. But to do that, you probably want, because I didn't add any shim for my droop. I can do that without preloading. It looks like I can add 0.3. The max droop looks like I have about 0.3. So maybe I can put a 0.1 just so that I don't have this much play in the spring. You want to do that so that the spring won't come out. or put tire tape under there to ensure that the spring is not gonna fall out. The double-sided tape, it collects RCP dirt, you know, the rubber and the dust, and it looks messy here. I mean, it just looks okay, but it works. Okay, or just do the droop. But I like the droop in the front. I like running droop. I do like to have droop in the front. So anyway, that's how you can lower your front of the MR04. And also, just by switching to 19 millimeter, it lowers the car down by, I want to say, oh, it depends on how tall the tires are, right? But 20, so half a millimeter. It should, if you're running the same thickness tires, you put on a 20 mil, then you put it on a 19 millimeter wheel, which is what I'm running, it's going to lower the car by half a millimeter. So if your car is 2.5 with a 20 mil, you put the 19, it should be 2 millimeters. And then if you want it lower, the 1.5, 1.6 is too low, but I'm going to find out when I go to the track. The back though, unfortunately, it's still high. You have to run the 19 to make it lower in the front, because right now it's at the lowest setting in the rear pod, and it's still 2 millimeters. Yeah, it's 2. Yep, it's 2 millimeters. It was 2.1, but because the front is lower, now the back end lowered by 0.1. So it's 2 and the front is 1.5. And that's okay. I don't get too technical with this car, but I did want to make this video to share to you guys that you can lower it. Just because it's lower doesn't mean it's better, okay? We are gonna lower it because now this car is, I want this car faster. Just go a little bit faster, okay? In the corners, not the straightaway speed, but in the corners. Right now, it's not that fast, and it's kind of slow infield because there's a lot of body chassis roll. Okay, so that's how you do it. That's the part number. Maybe I'll add something in the description. Okay, all right, thanks.